all the research is listed on our website about the ingredients that we use. So it's really made to help glycemic control, manage hyperglycemia, help lower LDL cholesterol, and promote overall health while giving the body the nutrition it needs in regards to fiber, omega-3, plant-based proteins, and, just natural antioxidants from almonds.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's you've actually, instead of just making a less sugary treat, you've actually made a health donut, which is really cool.
Yep. Yeah. I call it the functional donut.
Welcome to Brands for a Better World, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the people and products building a more just, healthy, and regenerative future for us all. Tune in weekly, and together, we'll learn about why these better products and brands were created, how they're helping fix broken systems, and what you can do to support them. My hope is that you'll discover some new brands to love and get some sparks of inspiration that will help you live your best life. Hi, I'm your host, Gage Mitchell, founder of Modern Species, a sustainable brand design agency helping better brands grow to scale their impact. If you like this show, please help it grow by leaving ratings and reviews on your podcast app and by sharing your favorite episodes with your friends. Maybe this will be one of them. On this episode, I'm speaking with Kathrin Henon, CEO of Planet Bake, about why she adopted a vegan and low-sugar diet, how that put her on the path to making a healthy donut using ingredients that help regulate blood sugar levels, why one of her biggest challenges so far has been educating people on the benefits of her sweetener of choice, allulose, and how she plans to become the better ingredients Nabisco on her journey to heal America. Then we wrap up with a rapid round question segment. Enjoy!
Hi everyone, my name is Kathrin Henon and I'm the founder and CEO of Planet Bake. At Planet Bake, we make a functional donut that is designed to help regulate blood sugar levels. It's also plant-based, gluten-free, soy-free, and kosher certified.
And you forgot to mention delicious, which it is. Thanks for sending samples ahead of time. It was fun to try them.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to have you on the show because I think we all know America has a sugar problem, right? It's in every single thing we eat, and it's causing all sorts of health problems. But I like having entrepreneurs like you on the show who are trying to tackle problems that we have in the world within the food system. And one of the problems you're tackling is this issue with sugar. So I'm curious, where did your passion for sugar come from?
Yeah, so basically, I was always eating health cautious and, trying to avoid sugary items. Growing up in Germany, we didn't really have that extreme sweets available. Yeah. I mean, obviously there are some, but I feel like when you're comparing like a German cake versus an American cake, it's triple times as sweet. So I didn't grow up to a large amount of sugars in any snacks or treats. And when I basically came to the United States and was seeing all what's available on the market, I knew I had to stay away from it. And it wasn't tasty at all, right? So when you're tasting something that is so extreme, sometimes you even go the opposite way. And I feel like this is what I did. I went the opposite way. I like everything to be minimal, semi-sweet, like I call it. My donuts are semi-sweet. It's not for everybody. If you grew up with that taste palette of everything being really sweet, you're not going to go from one day to another to eating no sugar at all. So it takes time. And when COVID hit in 2020, it's basically when I started being even more specific about not eating sugar. And during that period of time, basically in 2020, I also started to go plant-based. So basically right before COVID hit. And so that affected also the way I was looking for treats and dessert out there on the market. So when I looked at packaged foods and let's say a muffin or whatnot that is vegan, it also showed me on the nutrition label and the nutrition panel that it had a ton of added sugar, and most of them were high in saturated fat as well. To this date, I still come across these brands that are offering these, and it's great as a plant-based alternative, but I feel like we could do better. We have to do better, right? So that's, obviously, as you know, diabetes is a crazy issue in the United States, and diabetes is projected to triple over the next couple of
Oh
years.
man, I didn't know that.
And especially children being affected by it. So the average regular child in America consumes about higher than 70 grams of sugar per day, which overall it sounds a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I don't know how to picture that. Like physically, like if you were to pour that on your table, what does that look like? Do you know?
That's a good question, but I think it's like, a tablespoon can fit 15 grams of sugar if it's depending on the curve, right?
So it's a lot. It's a lot. It's like eating spoonfuls of sugar, just plain sugar. That's horrible.
Yeah, and that over a period of 1 day, right? So that's a lot.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it's funny because I was a weird kid. Like growing up, I liked vegetables and like just eating raw broccoli or, making all vegetarian food or something for myself. And I avoided a lot of the super sugary stuff. Like while other kids are pounding sodas, I was drinking V8 instead because I just liked that taste. So I probably should have just grown up in another country because I think my natural palate for sweetness, like all the American treats are often way too sweet, and I just can eat maybe one bite of it and then I feel kind of sick.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I think I'm the same as you in that like I seek out the unsweetened or very lightly sweetened kind of treats more often than not. So to your point, for people who are out there expecting a Krispy Kreme donut that's just 90% sugar that melts in your mouth or something when you eat it, this is not that, right? Yours are almost more like cakey, kind of is the way I would maybe describe it.
Yes, I call it an almond cake donut. It's a cake donut, and all the nutrition inside the product are actually chosen to help regulate blood sugar levels.
Right. That's cool. So like, again, I appreciate that it's more lightly sweetened, but some people out there might prefer a super sugary donut. And for them, they've got plenty of options. But for the people like you and I who want something a little less sweet, there were no other options. So I appreciate that you are kind of tackling that issue. I'm curious, though, you said that you decided to go vegan and limit more sugar and just eat healthier in general during the pandemic. I know a lot of people did because everyone's all of a sudden worried about their health and they're stuck at home. So they're like, well, may as well make some of my own food and make it healthier. But what drove some of those decisions for you during pandemic? Were you just trying to avoid putting on the pandemic pounds that a lot of people did, or was it your lifestyle changed in other ways?
Yeah, I think because number one, the plant-based change, which was my New Year's resolution at that time. What was very important when I did that, actually, was my own health, right? It was also animals, and overall, most importantly, climate change. Because we all know there's a lot happening in that space, and I didn't want to be another problem to it, right? Like climate change. And I wanted to stop eating meat, fish, dairies, all of that. And then while I was at it and COVID hit, I was like, well, I might as well reduce my sugar completely. Number one, it makes you feel better. You have higher energy throughout the day. You don't have these crashes midday that just hit you out of nowhere. You just feel so much better. You feel lighter. You move around differently during the day. And most of all, sugar also damages like your brain. Like it makes you not as productive. Same with alcohol. I feel like sugar and alcohol are very similar. Basically, alcohol has both of them, right?
Alcohol is sugar.
Yes.
It's like sugar that's been fermented, right?
But, it was very, you're more sharp, I would say.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, those are good benefits to have, obviously. So since you mentioned that part of the reason you were making these health changes were both for ethical reasons, like with the not hurting animals or not eating animals, right? But then also climate-based reasons. I know that sugar is not the only thing you're hyper-focused on with Planet Bake. you do a lot of other things, healthier ingredients, better ingredients for the planet, more ethically sourced. So can you talk about beyond the sugar focus, what all you put into these, bake into these donuts to make sure that you're considering all the ingredients in there?
Yeah, so ingredients that we use are all sorts of, I call it almost like a whole food, right? So we're using almond flour, we're using golden flax, we're using arrowroot flour, we're using a psyllium husk, avocado oil, and all of these ingredients are basically supporting of the lowering of blood sugar levels. And most importantly, our sweetener that we use, it's called allulose. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
I am loosely, but I'm very curious to hear, why you chose that, because there's most products out in the market, like we've all probably noticed, that are trying to reduce sugar. They don't necessarily mean they're reducing the sweetness. They just fill it with tons of other artificial sugars like aspartame, sucralose, stevia, etc. And most of those, for me, don't taste very good. They've got a bad aftertaste, or they like make my throat feel weird or something like that. So I just try to do completely unsweetened stuff most of the time, because whenever I see low sugar, I'm like worried of what's going to be in there. But you chose allulose, which isn't as common. Like I hadn't had a lot of it, and I didn't really have any of the weird taste issues with allulose. So can you talk about why you chose that?
Yeah, so allulose is an awesome sweetener. It has no aftertaste. There's a very small percentage out there that I've been talking to who said they get a small taste from it, but the majority doesn't. So allulose has very low calories. It's has zero impact on the glycemic index, meaning anybody who eats it that has diabetes type 1 or type 2, they will not see a spike from eating that allulose sweetener by itself, right? So when you're taking in consideration that you're eating other foods throughout the day, right, you have to take that into account. So depending on what you eat with it, it might affect a little bit, but overall allulose really helps to flatten the curve. So there was actually a recent study done where even if you eat the double amount of allulose as sugar, like sucralose, your curve will not spike as much. So there will be only, like, let's say the spike is really sharp right up, right? The curve overall it's not flat, but it's in the middle of both of them. It's between the very high spike and the zero. So it's an awesome sweetener to use, even if you're on a low sugar diet, I would say, because it really helps with a lot of functions in your body, and really like trying to be very mindful of your energy levels, your overall nutrition, and how it affects the body. Another thing that recently was, or is in the news, is Ozempic.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk too much about it, but basically allulose connects with the same GLP-1 that your body produces, and can help with easing appetite when you eat allulose on a regular basis.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. So if somebody's eating just regular sugar or one of the kind of artificial sweeteners that we were talking about, do those have any effect on appetite? Is this unique to allulose?
So in regards to other sweeteners, there are all kinds of rumors, right? But nothing is like set in stone and proven 100%. Okay. When you're looking at allulose, there is the research shows that it has the GLP-1 effect, but to compare it with a Ozempic drug, it's probably, Ozempic is very strong. It's made for this purpose. It's probably very high dosage. So if you're eating allulose on a natural daily basis in products that you're buying, like our donuts, you cannot compare the strength with an Ozempic drug. It's just like overall eased into your diet if that's a benefit or a purpose that you're seeking.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I do know, or at least I've heard that, some of those other artificial sugars have negative health effects too, right? Like you're avoiding the sugar because you want to avoid the bad things about sugar, but then you bring on other negative health effects. Like I forget all of a sudden which sugar it is, but there was a bunch of studies coming out that it was causing heart problems, for example. And
Yeah,
then
that's
some other
erythritol.
erythritol. There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one. And then I know that some of the other kind of artificial sugars actually, like maybe there's blood sugar thing, but I seem to remember some of them actually like make you crave more sweets or something like that. So it kind of ended up defeating the purpose because you're trying to avoid sugar and then all of a sudden you want more sugar or something. Do you know?
Exactly.
So erythritol, obviously we should avoid that, but of the other artificial sugars, which ones would you put, like when you've done your research, as the I would avoid these ones at all costs kind of category?
I mean, the number one, the sugar alcohols that are on the market, they are all created chemical. So meaning they will, if you eat a lot of it over time, they will affect your microbiome, and change your gut and make it not as healthy as it should be, right? And meaning from that, it could also increase your cravings overall. And then when you're talking about some of the names out there, you could, it's aspartame, it's xylitol, it's erythritol, it's like all the sugar alcohols that are fake. Yeah, artificial sweetener as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful for me. Like, again, I am not a sugar expert, but I know most of the time I'd rather just have a small amount of real sugar or honey or, dates or something like that in it rather than one of these fake sugars. Because for me, they just don't taste great typically. But then also I'm just worried about all these extra side effects. Speaking of which, what is the source of allulose? I think I was looking up that it can come from figs and raisins sometimes, but I think there are other sources. So do you know at least where your allulose is sourced?
Yes. So allulose commercially, it's produced from either corn or beets. Okay. Meaning the product, the sweetener of it gets extracted and then converted. I mean, when you're looking at sweeteners overall, every sweetener, even cane sugar, is processed. It doesn't mean it's completely pure, right? Unless you eat the cane and chew it, for hours, which nobody really does in America right now. But, so it's really coming from the corn or the beets. When you say jackfruit, figs, or raisins, that's usually where it occurs naturally. And nobody really, because nobody in America, we use it on such a larger scale, it's very hard to get it from the original sources.
Yeah. So for the people out there that are like, corn, isn't corn sugar or corn syrup bad for you? What's the difference then between corn syrup and allulose?
Yeah. So from corn to allulose, they basically extract the sweet part, the fructose out of the corn. So the corn, and then through the processing, the corn gets removed entirely.
Okay. Yeah, I think from a sweetness standpoint, I'm also curious, like how much allulose do you need to add to kind of be the equivalent of sugar? Is it kind of a 1-for-1?
So allulose has a ratio to sugar at 70%. So basically anything you replace, let's say you're making muffins at home and you want to replace the equivalent amount. And if you're somebody like you and me who doesn't love the sweetness taste, the 70% rule is pretty great because then you can eliminate 30% of sugar right there. And you have a semi-sweet muffin at the end of the day.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Because this doesn't like spike blood sugar or anything, when you're doing kind of like adding allulose to a product and then doing your package labeling, do you need to list it as an added sugar or does it count as that? Because I think sometimes if you just have like fruit sweeteners in there, you don't need to list it as added sugar, right?
Yeah. So the FDA in 2020, this is actually when allulose became more popular in the usage of brands particularly, is that the FDA said, now you're allowed to list allulose under the sugars, under the carbohydrates, and you have to call it out for what it is. meaning the end consumer finally knew actually what was inside, because before 2020 is when the brands were only allowed to list it within the carbs, within the carbohydrates. It wasn't even listed under the sweeteners or the sugars. You know how you have a call out sometimes about like sugar alcohols, like it is required, but at this time it wasn't a sugar alcohol either. So the FDA said, okay, and you can only list it under the carbohydrates. And anybody who really looked at the carbohydrates and is looking for net carbs or low calories, looking at net carbs, meaning they didn't understand it. Like it's just listed as really high carb, even though it didn't affect your body, your system at all.
Gotcha. Yeah. So if people are trying to avoid sugar, then now with the new FDA labels, it's easier to avoid sugar because it's called out more specifically within the sugar section on the nutrition panel.
Correct. Yes. And there's some brands that don't do it yet. I've noticed, but you just have to be, just read between the lines, read the nutrition labels. If erythritol or whatnot is listed there, it is inside the product, even if it's not a nutrition fact specifically called out.
Right. So bottom line for shoppers out there, sure, look at the nutrition panel, but always read the ingredients too.
Exactly.
You don't get all your info from the nutrition panel. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you kind of mentioned a little bit about all the other ingredients you have in the product being good for blood sugar as well. But I know there's other reasons you probably chose avocado oil, for example, because I know there's a lot of people out there like pushing against different types of oils right now. So can you explain your avocado oil choice?
Yes, of course. So avocado oil is my go-to oil in business and personal. So it basically reduces cardiovascular disease, where tropical oils do exactly opposite, right? So that leads to stroke, heart disease, you name it. I mean, there's so many issues. It starts small and then it over time it builds up. It clogs the arteries, and you might have a stroke or several strokes. And the reason being is that your blood vessels are clogged up.
Yeah. Do you know which oils are best to just completely avoid, or would you say like avocado oil is the only one you would eat, or are there some others that you eat on occasion, like olive oil or something like that?
I mean, everything is in its proportion, and So, I mean, there's avocado oil. I feel like olive oil is a good source as well. Other than that, I mean, chocolate, for example. A great source for to make chocolate or eat chocolate is really going pure and choosing cacao instead of palm oil or coconut oil. I mean, they both high in saturated fat, but cacao is more from the original source, and it's raw, it's real. And also in regards to palm oil, the issue of deforestation, right? I mean, there's a lot of the climate backlash in the palm oil industry. And I'm sure coconut, I mean, it's kind of the same issue. It's also rainforest, right? Like coconut, Latin America.
Which there are obviously some growers who are being more responsible about it, of course. So if somebody is labeled on their product that they're, orangutan friendly or regeneratively farmed coconut or something like that, then it's probably fine. But still, there's always other issues with all these different foods. And I don't know, you're obviously super educated in all the kind of ingredients and nutrition because you kind of deep dove this business, but also in your own personal life. But I feel bad for all the people out there who are just busy living their lives and couldn't even tell what's in an ingredient panel, even if they read it, because it's so hard to know these days what's good for you and what's not good for you, which is why I appreciate kind of bringing folks like you on the show who are just trying to make those decisions for consumers and just make a product that you did all the research, and that if they trust your brand, then they can just eat your products without having to worry about what's in there.
Yeah, a lot about it is also branding and positioning and communication. And a lot of brands are doing a great job hiding some of the
Right.
not so easy readable ingredients on the list.
Right. Like you would think that an ingredient is always written the same, but to your point, brands have clever ways of like hiding certain things by saying it's a proprietary blend of something, and then they don't necessarily have to list out all the different stuff in there, or they'll have a slightly different way of phrasing something that is maybe more of a scientific name that people won't recognize. But then there's this whole movement against like, well, if you can't read the ingredients, then don't buy the product. But even that I've seen pushback against because there's lots of perfectly healthy, clean ingredients that have weird scientific names that people don't know. So it's confusing. It's hard to be a healthy eater out there in a world where a lot of our food is just filled with junk.
Exactly. And, all our ingredients, I have done the research myself, and all the research is listed on our website about the ingredients that we use. So it's really made to help glycemic control, manage hyperglycemia, help lower LDL cholesterol, and promote overall health while giving the body the nutrition it needs in regards to fiber, omega-3, plant-based proteins, and, just natural antioxidants from almonds.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's you've actually, instead of just making a less sugary treat, you've actually made a health donut, which is really cool.
Yep. Yeah. I call it the functional donut.
Yeah, that's great. So when I was digging into your background, I noticed that you have a degree in strategic design and management from Parsons, which is cool because as a designer entrepreneur myself, I'm personally a big believer that in the power of design approaches and processes for business. So I'm curious, since you have that design background and this business background, how has that education helped you build this brand?
So the education specifically, it was very around mindfulness, I feel like. A lot is about sustainability as well.
Oh, wow.
Because, I think sustainability is in all aspects of every business today in the world, and people have to think about it. It's a lot of system thinking, how you structure it, what is the outcome, what is the positive, what is the real problem that you're solving, and the real goal of a product or service. And then overall, I had no knowledge of the industry when I first started this company. Yeah. And I feel like the studies have helped me gain an overall understanding of all the pieces that are being pulled together in regards to business, in regards to design. I mean, CPG companies, a huge part is design, right? Like there's packaging, there's communications, there's who's your customer, who's your target, who's your this, your that. So it's very important to understand all the aspects of the business, even the financials. That's why it's called business of design. And, it's very important to really grasp a deep understanding of what you're planning and what you're doing.
Yeah, that's cool. Because I think one of the things I like about being a designer is that you get to learn about so many different industries or products or businesses or problems that people are solving. So to your point, that process of discovery and kind of learning and setting a strategy and looking at the whole system and then coming up with ideas that might apply to that problem and then testing or prototyping some of those ideas, et cetera, like all those steps that we go through as creative, as designers, design strategists, whatever, help you really understand a problem quicker than if you're just zeroing in on a idea that you had of a solution. I think one of the problems with business before design started getting woven into it is entrepreneurs would come up with like a wacky solution idea. Like, oh, I figured out how you can buy things through text message. And then they say, well, who can I sell this to? So they like start with the solution and then they go in search of a problem. Whereas with a design process, you're more focused on what is the problem and what are the myriad of possible solutions, and then figure out which one makes the most sense for what we're doing right now. So it's just kind of it flips the way of thinking. So I like that you kind of mentioned it's about kind of figuring out what problem you're solving and thinking about the complex system and how every intervention maybe you make within that system is going to affect the other parts of the system. So the complexity, which if you didn't have that background, yeah, maybe you'd jump in and make a lot more mistakes.
Yeah, you explained it very well.
Cool.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool to you don't always see a ton of people with the design creative background going into entrepreneurship. So I encourage it. I appreciate it. I think creatives make great entrepreneurs. So as you've been on this journey, what are some of the most surprising or kind of biggest lessons you've had to learn along the way?
I feel like if you're building a company or a brand or a business, whatever that might be, I feel communication is everywhere, right? You have to communicate to everybody on the chain, really. So it is from supplier to vendors to customer to buyers to financial team to accounting. Like everybody has to understand the same message.
Right.
And if you don't communicate properly of like what you're building and what you're doing or why it serves a certain purpose, then if you don't do that, you basically already lost.
Yeah, that's true. Was there a moment where you there was a struggle or an obstacle or a challenge because of bad communication within the business and you had to catch it, or it's just something that you've realized as you've built the business, how critical communication is?
So because the business is built by me, my only challenge right now, still today, is the communication in regards to the allulose sweetener. So a lot of people have never heard about it, right? And so for me, my goal of the company and my personal purpose is I want them to know about allulose. I want them to understand what it is. I want them to understand what it can do for them. And I want them to be open to trying it at least. So ever since I started consuming it or putting it in my product, I'm actually eating it myself every day. I have not gained any weight over the last 3 years. If not even the opposite, but, in a healthy way. Not that I need it, but I'm just, it just helps overall. And the communication to the customer, like let's say I go out for demos, I always get this question, like, what is allulose even? And that's why I asked you this question, if you heard about it, because that's exactly what I asked the person in front of me. Have you heard about it? And then most likely I'm getting the answers no. And then I explain to them the benefits, what it can do for them. And then most likely they ask me where they can buy it and try it themselves, maybe in their coffee in the morning or whatnot, available on Amazon mostly. It's pretty expensive.
Really?
Like all natural ingredients are these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
inflation.
It's a matter of communication and just being open about it, telling them what it is. And that has been a challenge, but it also has been the positive that I can share my brand story.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because when you were first saying communication, I was picturing something that was going through my head recently when I was just reflecting on running a business. And it's like, no matter what kind of business you have, you're working with other people, either your customers, your employees, partners, collaborators, investors, whatever. Every single one of those relationships requires good communication, whether it's just being clear so that everyone's on the same page, or whether it's being compelling so you can convince people that your idea is a great idea and that they should come along on this adventure with you. So communication is so critical. But to your point, then there's also the consumer communication. When you're launching a new type of product that's kind of innovative, uses different ingredients, has a different level of sweetness, communication becomes even more critical, because it's not like you're just saying, here's another corn chip that's exactly like all the other corn chips, except, maybe we have less salt or something like that, right? It's easy to communicate that. But when you have all these healthy ingredients and an ingredient like allulose that people don't know, then education becomes a core part of the foundations of your brand. So that is an interesting note that you brought up there, that I think a lot of food entrepreneurs need to keep in mind is when you're being innovative, innovation comes at a cost too, because it comes with an education cost. You have to be able to explain to people why they should care about that innovation. And that can be time consuming or expensive, or just take time. Your brand might grow a little slower, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because you're also spreading a movement.
Exactly. Yep. I 100% agree with that. And Planet Bake has been building organically over the last 3 years. And we have only taken very considerate strategic investments. And I feel like, good products that are innovative or that go into a different direction of what everybody else is doing, they need to grow organically and be very mindful of people and where they are in their journey. Like not everybody's open to this product yet, but I feel like with the future and the advanced technology and ingredients, and there's so much that can be done. And I feel like there's a big shift coming because people understand how bad sugar is really for them.
Yeah, I've seen similar problems with other podcast guests or challenges. I shouldn't say it's a problem, but like Cooley is on a mission to like bring more moringa as an ingredient to people as a healthy ingredient, kind of a superfood. We called the episode that we had her on Super Kale because she was comparing like the nutrition benefits to kale, and it's like 3 times as good for you as kale. But nobody knows what it is. So she spent like, I don't know, 10 years. I can't remember how long she's been building that brand, but like 10 years just educating the world on what moringa is. And it's working. Our business keeps growing and more and more people are using moringa. And now she's like the number one provider of moringa in the world. So like it's beneficial. Excuse me. It's beneficial to like take on this mission of educating the world around a new ingredient, but it just takes time and lots of communication. So having the patience, like what you're doing and growing organically and just getting the word out bit by bit is the smart way to go.
Yeah, we have, gladfully, we have other supporters in the industry who do it, like RX Sugar, who are leading the way. Obviously, they're a big company and a lot of the bigger retail accounts, which makes it also more accessible to other communities and, the Midwest. And yeah.
Makes sense. Cool. So we've talked a lot about why you started the business and kind of what you're creating now, but what does the future for Planet Bake look like? You said you've kind of been growing organically. Are you looking to grow further, grow faster? I know you've got some other fun things that you're doing in-house that maybe will create revenue streams. So tell me a little bit about the future.
Yeah, so the big goal for Planet Bake is to become the next Nabisco, but made entirely of healthy ingredients.
I like it. That's a big, ambitious goal, but that's what you need to do. That's cool.
That's the goal. That's the vision of the company. We want America to eat healthy and, eat ingredients that are health beneficial and can promote overall well-being, getting off those meds overall. There's a lot of people who have done it with a plant-based diet or by doing other things. That's why I believe it's possible to heal America and make everybody super healthy.
That's great. So what is it going to take in the next year or two for you to start moving in that direction? I know you've got, for example, an in-house chocolate line you're building out, which is cool. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we just started doing an in-house chocolate line, and the reason for it was to have more control on what's actually going into it. I'm currently doing a lot of research on cacao and how it can be brought in sustainably. I've also talked to a lot of the companies out there who are doing chocolate that is not chocolate. But unfortunately, the current at this current stage, it's not quite there yet. For example, companies are not ready to launch or sell to other businesses, for example. And so I think that's going to take a little bit more time for this to come out. But overall, yes, I'm very interested in looking for alternative, better resources on how to produce our chocolate. So currently the chocolate frosting is only on the donuts, but we're planning to do more around that once we have figured out a sustainable way to do so. And that's just the chocolate line is just one item on the horizon. I'm currently also working on a lot of other R&D product developments who have advanced ingredients incorporated.
Cool. I think so. Do you like that R&D side of the business, or is that where because that's kind of how you created the donut in the first place, is doing your own R&D. So is that kind of your favorite spot of the business, is playing in the R&D part?
It is one of my favorite spots to be at. Just because number one, you're learning, you're growing, you have so many different conversations with people, and they're all doing awesome things in the industry. It's so important also to be open-minded and to wanting to learn about new sustainable ways of how to approach a problem that is a real issue in the world, right? So when we're talking about plant-based protein, there's so much movement and so much more that can be done. There's plant-based yogurts, there's plant-based everything these days, really. And I feel like for me, it's all about pushing the boundaries of what is possible with, again, the naturally and 100% healthy ingredients.
That's cool. I love that kind of thinking of just pushing the boundaries of what's possible with better ingredients. That's really cool, because as I think a lot of us in the healthier food world know, there's the "let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food" kind of statement from Hippocrates, I believe is who said that. But that's, we're part of Earth. Earth has made plenty of great food for us, and all we have to do is eat that food in as little of a processed way, and with moderation and balance and all that kind of stuff, and we'll be healthy. But we've caused so many health problems because we've continually tried to create new foods or extract one thing from a food that then ends up being really bad for us, like trans fats or different things like that. So we keep messing with the system, but there's great stuff already out there. So I love kind of thinking about how do we get back to making food that's good for us instead of just indulgent and tasty.
Yeah, exactly. And, as I'm having this big vision of the company, I mean, there's always, as I'm building the company out, I'm always looking for advisors to add to our team, or we're currently doing an angel round investment. I am always open to talk to people or give advice to other founders even, on how to start a scrappy company.
Great. And this podcast is one of those ways that you can spread advice. So I appreciate you sharing some of your knowledge here. So that's awesome. We'll make sure that everyone kind of goes to your website, checks it out, and hopefully tries some products. And then maybe if they've got ways that they want to help you grow, they can reach out. But for kind of wrap up, I'd like to dive into a rapid round question segment, if you don't mind.
Okay. Sure.
So first off, since obviously you're pretty big into eating healthy, I just have to ask, when you do let yourself indulge, what's your favorite cheat treat?
That's pretty simple to answer. It's ice cream.
Ice cream. Okay. Do you have a favorite flavor or something?
I like, currently, because I'm vegan, I like the tofutti classic flavor. Yeah.
Cool. Love it. I feel like I go in waves of eating ice cream, but I do love kind of like the more, all the different types of flavors and varieties. There's so many different, like whether it's plant-based, like macadamia nut ice cream that I had recently that was really delicious, but there's all sorts of fun stuff. I do love some ice cream. So if you could collab with any other brand, who would it be?
That's a tough question. I think because of my ice cream obsession, it would probably be Ben & Jerry's. And we would make a collaboration eventually where we do, like cookies and cream. Yeah. We'll do basically donuts and cream.
That sounds awesome. I want that now. Hopefully they're listening and they call you about that collaboration. Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've received either recently or just ever?
That's a very tough question. I feel like people have been telling me over the years to stay true to yourself and, don't get yourself cluttered up with the people around you. Just, listen to your gut and stick to the plan, because you get distracted so much from there's, media, social media, people around you, family, friends, and everybody has their own opinion. But at the end of the day, if you don't stay focused, yes, you can take all this advice into consideration, but you still have to be true to yourself. And at the end of the day, you're the only one who can decide what is the next step.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think that's something I've been processing a lot internally myself lately is the when is it good to seek out other advice or to think about all the billion different options, and when is it good to just go with your gut? And what I'm finding is working with some coaches and stuff that going with the gut 90% of the time or whatever is right. And I save a lot of time by not overthinking things or not asking a billion other people for their opinion before I make a decision. If I just go with my gut, like overall, it's just, if you've had enough experience and you have thought things through a lot and you wrote a plan down, then it's probably pretty good to follow through with. So don't let other people distract you from that. That's good advice. Who's an impact-driven leader that you admire and why?
Somebody who I've been admiring for a while because of what he has been building and done for the community is Daniel from Kind Bar.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I think he's been mentioned a couple times. He's obviously done a lot to shift the industry and built an impressive business. So that's a good one.
I had the opportunity to work with his nonprofit last year in December, cool. Which was a great experience.
Oh, I didn't even know he had a nonprofit. What's his nonprofit?
The nonprofit is called frontlineimpact.org.
Frontline. Okay, cool. And what kind of work do they do?
They basically work with all kinds of companies who have like extra product that they want to donate. And then they basically try to find you the right fit and the right partnership that you can then work with and, supply the product.
Oh, that's amazing. Cool. I'll check it out, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes for other people to look at it too. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. So since this podcast is called Brands for a Better World, what does better world mean to you?
A better world means for me that every human is responsible of their action. And meaning, and when you talk about actions, I mean like looking at the world, right, the planet in regards to climate change and, being very mindful of if every human on the planet would be mindful of that, we wouldn't be in this position.
Right.
That we're in today.
Yeah. That's a good
I know
point,
it's a tough one, but
yeah, because at the end of the day, I think most people want to do the right thing, right? And especially if protecting the planet means protecting ourselves and the future of our children and other things like that, then of course most people want to do the right thing. But to your point, we kind of get in the habit of just going with them through the motions, and we've got so many other things to deal with that we're not paying attention to every little decision we make, like which brand of toothpaste we're buying or whether or not we put chemicals on our lawn or where our energy is coming from. And it's just, we go on autopilot and don't think about stuff. But the more we think about it, the more most people would make the right decision, hopefully. So,
yes. And we're living in such a fast-paced environment. So, obviously convenience is very important. But sometimes it's good to sit back and reflect and look at it, what it actually means. I know it's super difficult. But if it's not on the daily space, maybe it could be done somewhere else.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Well, I love that. Love those notes. I appreciate what you're doing to try to change the food industry. I love your really big vision, and I'm excited to watch you continue growing this company and see what you put out next. And I'm really hoping that Ben & Jerry's contacts you about that donuts and cream ice cream, because I think that would be super delicious. I do love a good cookies and cream, but donuts and cream would be a fun twist on that. So thanks for doing everything you're doing to try to change the world, and for taking some time to come on the show and share what you're doing with our community.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this conversation and speaking about the real problems that we're facing. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about Kathrin or Planet Bake, visit planet-bake.com. If you like this show, remember to help us grow by liking, reviewing, and sharing. If you're new here, don't forget we have over 100 episodes in the archive. Some might be called Evolve CPG, but it's the same show, so dig in for more goodness. If you consider yourself an impact-driven professional, join me over at impactdriven.community, where we're supporting each other's growth as impact leaders.